please.
Threatened concrete action, including targeted sanctions.
Oh, again, reminder everyone, just keep muted while you're entering the chat. Again, thank you for interpretation instructions. If you have any questions, feel free to drop down the chat and we can help you out with that piece. Once again, welcome and thank you everyone for joining our Climate Justice and Clean Air Colectivo Encuentro with Green Latinos. As always, feel free to drop your name, your pronouns, organization, and location in the chat. Also, while you're sharing this info, I would love to hear your go-to items to bring when you get invited to a summer barbecue. Summer is just around the corner, and for many of us, it's already summer temperatures. So just trying to get us in that summer vibe. I'll share my favorite thing to bring is always drinks. I think it's just super easy. So like Coke, apple soda, the sangria soda is my favorite as well. And occasionally I'm the uncle who brings like the gluten-free options. So like gluten-free beers or ciders for those. And my favorite thing to eat during a lot of these barbecues is grilled onions, like those bulb onions. They're super good. I'll give it a few moments for everyone to respond in the chat. But if you'd also like to unmute yourself to share, go ahead. I'm seeing some great, lots of fruit. Watermelon, love watermelon. I love putting a lot of tahini on my watermelon though, which is kind of funny. Yeah, another watermelon, fresh fruit, veggie burgers. I have recently been in love with the black bean burgers. I think those are really yummy and they grill really good. So those are really good. Shredded cheese, I love that. The toppings are very important. Awesome. Well, I'll let everyone continue dropping down their favorite items to bring. Again, thanks for sharing, and I hope you guys get to enjoy lots of great food this summer, surrounded by amazing people. I think Green Latino should maybe do a fun carne asada sometime as an encuentro. So I'm putting that out into the universe. All right, so quick overview of today's agenda. We'll begin by handing over the mic to Diana Van Vliet and Natalia Reyes from American Lung Association for a breakdown of the state of the air. They'll talk more about what that means and kind of the breakdown of that report. Next, we'll go over program updates, including upcoming testimony opportunities for extreme heat rulings, our update for our story collecting campaign to protect clean energy tax incentives, and two exciting events in both Los Angeles and Phoenix. Finally, but not least, we'll wrap up with some member updates and announcements from all of you. So if you have an upcoming event, question, or ideas for the collective, keep a pin on those till the end. We would love to hear from you guys. Quick reminder, throughout the presentation, we'll have designated Q&A sections, but feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat as we go along, and we'll answer those during those dedicated times. Next slide, please. All right, now I'd like to introduce the team from the American Lung Association, Diana Van Vliet and Natalia Reyes Serra. Quick bios, Diana Van Vliet is the Director of Nationwide Clean Air Advocacy at the American Lung Association, where she works to advance science-based federal clean air and climate protections. Before joining the American Lung Association, she served as the Manager of Policy Communications at Climate Nexus, a nonprofit focused on climate and clean energy solutions. Diana holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science and political science from the University of Virginia. And we have Natalia Reyes Serra is a nationwide clean air advocacy manager at the American Lung Association, working to strengthen protections against air pollution and climate change. Previously, she was at Health Equity Policy and Research Associate at the Healthy Americas Foundation, the supporting organization of National Alliance for Hispanic Health. Natalia holds a BA in Ethnicity, Race, and Migration from Yale University and a graduate certificate in Applied Policy and Government from California State University, Sacramento. Thank you both for being here with us. As summer is right around the corner, a lot of individuals are already thinking about wildfire season, ozone season coming up, and a lot of extreme weather issues. So we thought it'd be great to invite you to help us understand this great report you guys brought out. So Mike is all yours. Next slide, please.
Well, I will start us off, and I'll just say thank you so much for the kind introduction and the invitation. We're thrilled to be here with you all today talking about this report, and we're really grateful for all of the work that you all are doing. I know I recognize a number of your names and organizations in the chat, and we're so grateful for your work, especially right now. So I will just I think we can turn the slide over to the next slide, and I'll just say a couple words about why we do this State of the Air report every year. Next slide, please. So this was our 26th annual State of the Air report. It's hard to believe, but it came out just this April of this year, and the first one we did was published in 2000. So we've been doing it for quite a long time. It's the first of what the Lung Association calls our signature reports. And we find that we get a lot of traction with this report every year because it puts air pollution into everyday language. Its longevity, its reliability, and its credibility have really helped our partners, refer to local air pollution where they live, and it is our sincere hope that it can be a resource for all of you too. And we also, I know we'll have a Q&A at the end, but we would really love to hear any feedback you have or ways that you have used it or things you'd find helpful. So I'll just say that at the start. I'll talk a little bit more in a second about the kinds of air pollution this report looks at, which is specifically particle pollution and ozone pollution. And the report gives grades to 885 counties with monitors. So all the counties that have sufficient monitoring data, which is unfortunately not all of the counties. There are 3,221 counties, but only 885 have official air quality monitors, and Natalia will talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. The report ranks metro areas with the worst pollution and the cleanest air for 3 pollutants. So I will go to the next slide, please, and just say a couple words about what we're looking at. So ground level ozone pollution, which is sometimes known as smog, is one of the most widespread and dangerous pollutants in the US. It's good up high in the sky where it protects us in the ozone layer from radiation, but it is not good on the ground. We do not want to be breathing it. At the Lung Association, we often say that ozone can act like a sunburn on the lungs. One interesting thing about ozone is that it has to be cooked through a chemical process. It doesn't just occur. So it is cooked when VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, are present along with nitrogen oxides in the presence of sunlight. And it's a powerful lung irritant. When inhaled into the lungs, it reacts with the delicate lining of the small airways in the lungs, causing inflammation and other damage that can cause harm throughout the body. Next slide, please. And the other kind of air pollution that State of the Air looks at is particle pollution. So this is often referred to as soot. It's a deadly and common air pollutant, and particle pollution just refers to a mixture of tiny little things in the air that you don't want to be breathing. So it's a mix of solids and liquids, and it can come from many sources, including factories, power plants, vehicles, and a huge and increasing source is wildfires, in addition to residential fireplaces and biomass. These particles can be so teeny tiny small that they enter through the bloodstream. And it's important to say that there's no safe threshold to breathe in fine particles. These, no matter what level you're breathing, it is harmful. Next slide, please. So both ozone pollution and particle pollution can harm children and adults in multiple ways. At the Lung Association, we primarily focus on the lung health impacts. So you can see here on the left some respiratory impacts of these two air pollutants. They can cause wheezing and coughing, shortness of breath, asthma attacks, worsening COPD symptoms, and lung cancer in the case of particle pollution. But both pollutants also cause a number of other health harms, including early death, heart attacks and strokes, metabolic disorders, um, harm to pregnant individuals and their fetuses in a number of ways. And it's important to say that everyone's health is at risk from air pollution, including healthy adults, but there are some groups who face even higher risks, including children, older adults, people living with chronic health conditions, individuals who are pregnant, individuals who work outside, people of color, people with low incomes. And essentially that's someone in everyone's family. This is sort of the framing and the context of what we're looking at in this report and why it's so important. And with that, I will turn it over to Natalia to cover some of the key findings of the report this year. So next slide, please.
Thanks, Diana. So yeah, now we'll walk through some of the key findings from this year's report. Our key messages this year are that more than 156 million people, or nearly half of the US population, are living in places that get failing grades for unhealthy levels of ozone and particle pollution. And that's nearly 25 million more people breathing unhealthy air compared to last year's report, and more than in any other state of the air report in the last 10 years. 42.5 million people live in counties with the worst air, getting failing grades for all three measures. And these counties are spread across 9 states, 6 of which are east of the Mississippi River. And that's a big change from recent years when they were concentrated in the west. Deadly particle pollution continued to get worse, and ozone pollution impacted more people across the country. And the burden of living with unhealthy air is not shared equally. So research has shown time after time that communities of color are disproportionately exposed to unhealthy air and are also more likely to be living with one or more chronic conditions that makes them more vulnerable to air pollution, including asthma, diabetes, and heart disease. Next slide, please. So although people of color make up about 41% of the overall population of the US, they are about 50% of the people living in a county with at least one failing grade. And notably, Hispanic individuals are nearly 3 times as likely as white individuals to live in a county with 3 failing grades. Next slide, please. This year, more people in more parts of the country are seeing their health put at risk from unhealthy air pollution, and fewer people in fewer places are living with the cleanest air. After several years of reporting that the worst of the nation's air quality problems were largely concentrated in western states, State of the Air 2025 finds that the geographic distribution of air pollution is shifting back towards the east. The year 2023, which is included in this year's report for the first time, brought somewhat improved conditions to the West Coast, but also a deadly heat wave in Texas and an unprecedented blanket of smoke from wildfires in Canada that drove ozone and particle pollution in dozens of central and eastern states higher than they've been in many years. Next slide, please. Deadly particle pollution continued to worsen, impacting communities in many parts of the country. This year, more than 77 million people lived in counties that got an F grade for short-term spikes in particle pollution, and that's 12 million more people than in last year's State of the Air report, and more than double the historic low of 35 million in 2018. Wildfires in the US are not only increasing the number of days and places with these unhealthy spikes of particle pollution, but also the severity of that pollution. So next slide, please. So this year, the nation experienced the highest number of red and purple days on the AQI for daily particle pollution ever in the 26-year history of the report. There were over 1,200 red or unhealthy days and 231 purple or very unhealthy days. In a glimmer of better news, there were only 27 hazardous maroon days this year, which are not shown here. And that's fewer than the last couple of years, but still a sharp increase from the number in the single digits of maroon days that were reported from 2004 to 2019. And next slide, please. In the report, we rank the worst 25 metro areas for each pollutant. But since I only have room on this slide for the worst 10, that's what you're looking at. As you can see, the 10 most polluted cities for daily PM are all in the west. All but one of these, Visalia, improved compared to last year, though they still get seriously failing grades. When you look at the rest of the worst 25, you'll see some eastern cities back on the list, including Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Detroit, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. After more than a decade of the Lung Association's advocacy, last year, EPA finally strengthened its standard for what's considered unhealthy for year-round exposure to particle pollution. That resulted in a big jump in the number of people and places with failing grades in last year's report, and was a long overdue recognition of the widespread chronic nature of this deadly form of air pollution. This year's report finds 85 million people living with unhealthy levels of year-round particle pollution, slightly fewer than last year, but still the second highest number in the history of the report. Given the influence of transported wildfire smoke from Canada on annual PM levels, the states that worsened were mainly in a band from North Dakota, south and east, as far as Maryland. Next slide, please. So here are the worst 10 metro areas for year-round particle pollution. Last year, they were all in the west, but this year you can see some of that geographic shift. In general, cities in western states improved and those in central and eastern states got worse. Fresno and Los Angeles posted their cleanest levels ever, though they're still ranked amongst the worst 5. Cleveland, in contrast, had the most dramatic shift from 54th worst last year to 9th this year. And now I'll hand it over to Diana to talk a little bit more about this year's findings for ozone pollution.
Thank you. So I think, overarching point on ozone is that this year's report was pretty remarkable in that we saw ozone get a lot worse, which is noteworthy because for the state of the air reports prior to this, we really were seeing an improving trend, and we were pretty taken aback when we saw the ozone results for this year. So more than 125 million people live with levels of ozone air pollution that put their health at risk, which is about 37% of the population and an increase of nearly 25 million people from last year. As I mentioned, this is a distressing reversal of the progress we've been seeing in recent years. The places that received F grades for ozone were spread across 211 counties and 35 states. That's 93 more counties and 10 more states that were represented in the failing list last year. The hardest hit region of the country was a swath of states extending north to south from the Midwest and the plains down to Texas. And transported wildfire smoke and extreme heat were major contributing factors. I think it's important to note, Natalia was talking about how the connection between wildfires and particle pollution is more well known, but I think this year's report just shines a light on the fact that wildfires really influence the formation of ozone pollution too. Next slide, please. So despite the widespread worsening of ozone levels across the country, the worst 10 list and the worst 25 list remain relatively unchanged from last year. Los Angeles retains its perennial position at the top of the most polluted for ozone list, as it has for all but one of the report's 26 years, with a weighted annual average of 154 days of unhealthy levels of ozone. This is the city's 3rd year of improvement in a row, but it's still more than 5 months, but it still gets more than 5 months a year of unhealthy ozone days. So it has its work cut out for it. Fresno, California, though still on the worst 5 list for all 3 pollutants, is making some good progress, reporting steadily falling levels of ozone pollution for the last 5 years. Next slide, please. So many cities in the US enjoy air that is considered clean for one or more of the pollution measures that we track. A full list is included in this year's report. And there are, of course, many other communities in which there are no monitors, some of which probably would make this clean cities list if we had the air quality information for them. But among those places where we do have data, this year only had 2 cities, Bangor, Maine, and San Juan, Puerto Rico, which were on the cleanest list for all 3 pollutants, meaning that they had 0 days high in ozone or short-term particle pollution, and are on the best 25 cities for year-round particle pollution. This is a change from recent years when we have seen at least a handful of cities on this list, which is another indicator of the deterioration of air quality nationwide that we're seeing in this year's report. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to take a moment to walk you through the State of the Air website, which has a lot of information, and we would love to help you find the information most relevant to you if you're interested. So most people will be looking for information about where they live, and you can get there in a couple different ways. Just under the image on the home page marked here with a red arrow, you can select your location, either by zip code or state. Clicking on a state will show you the information for all counties in the state that have monitors, and zip code entries will take you right to the appropriate county, whether or not that county has an air quality monitor. Next slide, please. If you scroll down in the State of the Air landing page, you'll find the various report cards we provide. There are rankings of the cleanest cities and most polluted cities for each of the 3 pollution measures, plus links to state and county level report cards. Next slide, please. I'm 7 months pregnant, so I get out of breath of speaking very easily these days. So right now there's 3 different screenshots here, and we wanted just to show you that when you look at right now on the top left, this is a state report card. You'll see the 3 main tabs at the top where you can take a deeper look at ozone grades, particle pollution grades, and the populations most at risk by county. So that's another important thing that we use a lot at the Lung Association is the population, the specific populations at risk, and we have that information in the report. Please note that only counties with data for that pollutant are listed. The grades are color-coded, and they can be sorted by county, grade, or weighted average. And when you click on the county's name, it takes you to that county's report card. I know we're getting a little bit in the weeds, so I'm trying to not give you too much information here, but on the upper right, you'll see a snippet of the report card for Lake County, Illinois. The 3 grades are shown right up top. So you'll see that for Lake County, there is no grade for either short-term or annual particle pollution. The DNC stands for did not collect. And unfortunately, as we mentioned, there are far too many places in the country that we don't have air quality information for. And the Lung Association we get this information from EPA, and Natalia will talk a little bit more about the methodology in a little bit. If you see INC for incomplete, that means that we have some data, but not enough for all 3 years to track or assign a grade. You can also see which county falls into a metro area. And so they're connected. And then lastly, I'll just say the bottom graph shows trend charts. And we found that these have been really helpful to show, especially for places like LA that still have bad pollution, but have made tremendous improvements, and we want to recognize that. The trend charts show the change over time for the pollutants that we track. And in most cases, you can see the downward trend over time thanks to the Clean Air Act, at least until the impact of the changing climate has started to reverse that trend. Next slide, please. So hopefully I didn't bore you with too many specifics, but there's so much great information in the report. The key findings section covers the highlights that we're sharing with you today. The sections on health impacts of air pollution provides the evidence base for why we do what we do. It includes up-to-date research findings on the health effects of particle pollution and ozone, and an explanation of which groups are increased risk. And then we also have recommendations for action, which I'll go over in a little bit. But with that, I will turn it back to Natalia to talk through our data grades and rankings.
Thanks, Diana. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So as Diana gave a little preview to, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about where we get the data, what we do with it, and how we assign the grades and determine the ranks. So we use the most recent quality assured data that's available all across the nation for full years. So for the 2025 report, that includes 2021, 2022, and 2023. The states, tribes, and local air pollution agencies collect that data, and they submit it to EPA for review and validation. And once EPA says it's good to go, they post it online. And typically it takes until the middle of the following year from when that data was collected for all of it to get through that process. That's why we don't yet have the data for 2024. Then we, with our consultant, download the EPA data and crunch the numbers to assign those grades to the various counties. Next slide, please. So once we get the data from EPA that has been analyzed, we do calculations to figure out the grades. Then we share those draft sets of grades with states, tribes, and local air agencies, or all those agencies for their review and one last double check. And if you have any other questions about this, our methodology section goes a little bit more in depth into all this process. Next slide, please. So what do we grade? We grade two pollutants, as Diana mentioned, ozone and particle pollution. And we grade them in similar but different ways. So for ozone and short-term particle pollution, we look at the number and severity of days with unhealthy air and use that information to get A to F grades. For the year-round or annual average measure of particle pollution, we assign a pass or fail grade. So in the usual case, a county could have up to 3 grades or as many as 3 grades for their air. Next slide, please. So for ozone and short-term particle pollution, the two categories we look at on a daily basis, we base their grades on the daily measure of the air quality index. We use that information to give more weight to days that have worse air pollution. So for example, orange days or days that are unhealthy for sensitive groups get a weight of 1, all the way up to maroon or hazardous days that are each weighted as 2.5 times as bad. In other words, we take into account how bad the ozone and particle pollution levels are, not just how many days with unhealthy air there are. Year-round particle pollution is handled differently. In that case, we use EPA's calculation for what each county's long-term average particle pollution level is. The units used here are micrograms per cubic meter, and then the calculated result is called a design value. And then the grades are either pass or fail. So the thing to concentrate on here is simply how a county's average compares to the national air quality standard of 9. So counties with levels equal to 9 or less than 9 get a passing grade, and only levels greater than 9 will get a failing grade. Next slide, please. So EPA and state and local officials place monitors where they're likely to measure the worst widely experienced air pollution in that county, as well as other areas in a county such as downwind of major sources. So what you see here is an array from Pima County, California. And next slide, please. Many US cities and counties, as Diana mentioned, don't have monitors, leaving residents with no official monitored information on their air quality. About 22% of the US population lives in a county without any monitor for ozone or fine particles. So no monitoring for a pollutant in a county means no data, which means we give no grade for that pollutant. And next slide, please. So all of the preceding information gives you an idea of how we come up with grades for counties. But counties are also often regarded as part of metro areas. So within each metro area's boundaries, usually made up of several counties, we look at the worst county weighted averages for long-term PM and long-term PM. And we use those to rank the metro areas across the country. The Federal Office of Management and Budget decides what counties are included in these things called metropolitan statistical areas, or even lumps them together in some places to make combined statistical areas. Rather than use these jargony terms, though, the Lung Association uses the word cities or metro areas interchangeably with those. Be aware that these defined cities include but are not equivalent to the political city entities. And now I'll turn it back over to Diana.
Thank you. So taking a step back and looking at what does this mean for advocacy and where are we right now? I'll just say it was a very different world when we put out State of the Year last year. So in last year's report, we highlighted a suite of strong clean air protections that EPA had recently finalized, including stronger particle pollution standards that Natalia talked about that we incorporated into the report this year, stronger cleaner car standards, cleaner truck standards, lots of good stuff. Now new EPA leadership has announced plans to reconsider or roll back all of the standards that we highlighted in last year's report. EPA's grants have been frozen and even clawed back, many of them, and many EPA staff are at imminent risk of being dramatically cut. So we are in a very different federal political landscape than we were last year. We wanted to just put that context out there up front. Next slide, please. So for this year's advocacy message, the Lung Association is calling on everyone to support and defend the mission of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to protect human health and the environment. We're unfortunately taking it back to basics. EPA's mission is under threat, gutting staff and programs and rolling back rules that save lives. It is EPA's job to write and enforce rules that make sure that air pollution gets cleaned up and that the pollution levels are safe to breathe. It's also their job to make sure that air pollution gets monitored. And as we know, there are still many places that don't have air monitors, but the ones that do are also potentially under threat. Without EPA staff and programs, families won't know what's in the air that they're breathing, and efforts to clean up air pollution will be undone. So this is a really critical moment. This year's call to action for State of the Year is a petition that we've linked to here, and we can also circulate afterwards, calling to defend on EPA and their mission. Next slide, please. So taking it a little bit further, thank you so much for sharing that petition in the chat. We have 3 different sections in the recommendations for action. So defending EPA staff and funding, defending EPA rules, especially the big ones that we had in 2023 and 2024 on power plants and vehicles and industry. Next slide, please. And moving things forward at the state, city, community, and individual levels. So we wanted to give people information on ways to be proactive and offensive and still move the cause forward and not just play defense, although playing defense is very important right now. So we list out recommendations for action at these non-federal levels, including that states can advance clean vehicles through adopting the advanced clean cars and clean trucks measures, and adopting more clean electricity. Cities and communities can employ smart surfaces, which help adapt to extreme heat, and also improve air quality. And, we also, above all, using the power of your personal voice and talking to your neighbors and your friends and your family members about air quality and EPA and why these things matter and how they impact health. Next slide, please. So in a more specific way of what folks can do if they're interested, sharing the petition or the action alert that we have for this year's State of the Year report to help defend EPA, sharing the recommendations for action section with leaders at every level. We have shared the report with members of Congress and their staff. But it certainly does not hurt to hear over and over again, especially at the state and local level, to hear from constituents. That's the most powerful thing. Feel free to use the report and the findings in it for earned media, like letters to the editor and op-eds, for social media posts. And feel free to include our advocacy asks as well. And then lastly, just saying, talking about, I think right now we're really focused on trying to communicate why this matters for people and their health. It's not just people in DC who are losing their jobs, although that's important too. But I think there's a disconnect around the country of why this matters for people, day to day in their everyday lives. So as much as you can do to communicate that, and we hope that this report is useful in those endeavors. Next slide, please. I know we're pushing time, so I promise we'll wrap soon. This is the last slide. Additional opportunities. We have a lung action network if you're interested in more advocacy opportunities from the Lung Association. And if you're a health professional, or if you know of any health professionals who would like to join a specific group of health professional advocates, we have that too, and we'd love for you to join. We helped with a film, Unbreathable, the Fight for Healthy Air, that looks at the 50 years of the Clean Air Act. It was made in 2020. That's available and has subtitles in Spanish. I'll put it in the chat really quick. That's a great resource if anyone's interested. So anyways, I'll stop talking. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And then next slide, just want to make sure flag that you guys have their contact information. Again, we'll be sharing this slide afterward, the whole presentation, recording, and slides if you have any of those questions. But next slide. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and open it up to Q&A. I do see that we have some hands up and then a few questions in the chat. Maybe we'll start with David. Looks like you have your hand up, so go ahead and unmute once you're ready.
Who are you calling on?
You, David. You
Yes, thank you. I'm David. I'm in Tampa with LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens. My question is related to how the American Lung Association can help the public understand. The media will pick up that you get an A, a B, or a C, or even a D. And it's only when they get a D that the media says, oh, this is a big deal. I think it's important in your reporting to point out for the public the shortcomings of the process by which you get the information, and also help the public understand or how to interpret the data. It's not just for a member of the public who gets the newspaper, gets your website, looks it up and says, oh, it's a B, well, it's cool, or it's an A, cool. I think we have a responsibility also as local activists to make sure that the local American Lung Association offices do a job and try to make sure that the local counties have good reporting, because we trust you, and yet we often don't trust the way our local folks report. And if you can comment on what efforts have been made or your limitation on being able to make the reporting more realistic. Thank you.
Thanks for the input. We really appreciate the feedback. And I'm hoping I'm understanding your question. Apologies if I'm not fully understanding it, but it is wonky, as is evidenced by the presentation. It gets pretty technical, and we do try to be as clear as possible. But I know there's always room for improvement. I know we've heard from other places, like especially in California, which is doing so much to clean up air pollution, but still has a lot of poor air quality grades, that they want to have progress recognized, even though they're not getting the best grades. So we've been trying to spotlight success stories. I think employing the trend charts that we have has really helped too. Like, yes, you may still have had a failing grade, but if you look at the change of an air quality over time, it makes a big difference. And it's tricky too, because even though a lot of places around the country, and I can't speak to the Tampa area specifically, I'd have to pull it up, have made progress. The grades are what they are, and so we don't want to tell people that they're breathing okay air quality, even if they have made strides, if there are a number of days of the year that it's unhealthy to breathe the air. So I definitely hear you on the communications challenges, especially on the local level, knowing that we have so many different states to roll it out in. I appreciate your feedback, and I'll take that back to the team, especially in Florida.
Thank you.
Did have another question from the chat earlier. I think it was answered, but just this analysis was done using solely EPA FEM/FRM.
Let's see. So that's a really good question. I am not one of the technical authors on this. And I know, Natalia, you took the methodology section. Do you happen to know, modeling wise, if that's?
I don't happen to know the answer to that question, but we can definitely follow up with our technical experts on the team, and answer that question.
Awesome. And that was a question from Valentina. So I'll make sure to save that, and with the follow-up, we can hopefully get you an answer on that piece. Another question, and I do have to apologize. Looks like we are going a little over time, so I think this might be last question, but feel free to continue sending in those questions, and maybe we can send those over to your team and get some answers with that follow-up. But we have one from Ariana, where I live, the ozone is D, particulate pollution 24 hours is F, but particulate pollution annual is pass. Can you explain what that means and why that would be? So it looks like these different grades for the different types of pollution.
Natalia, since you covered that section, do you care to take the first stab?
Sure. So it looks like where you're living, we get a D for ozone, an F for the short-term particle pollution, but a pass for the annual. So the difference between the short-term and the annual would be that your area is likely seeing some spikes in the daily measures of particle pollution. So the AQI on that day would read like a hazardous or an unhealthy day. But in terms of the annual average, so that's averaged throughout the year, it would still be under the national ambient air quality standard of 9 micrograms. So you can still meet that annual average, but have those daily spikes, which would make you have the 24-hour particle pollution have a lower grade. I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we do have a few other questions in the chat. Diana and Natalia, I'm not sure if you guys have availability to continue answering those maybe in the chat as we continue our presentation.
Yes, we'll do. I know you have other things to get to, but we can work on those questions in the chat.
Awesome. No worries. Again, thank you both for this deep breakdown. I think it's been very eye-opening and really helpful for us to kind of understand what's at stake with a lot going on with the EPA right now.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
All right, we can go to next slide. Awesome. And we do want to flag real quick that we did come out with a blog post that kind of goes specific into the impacts to the Latino community. So we used some of the data that came out from the report, and just kind of broke that down and highlighted some of the cities that are more populated with the Latino community. So putting that down in the chat for you guys to read up on. Next slide, please. All right, so now I'm going to go over some program updates. The first one we want to update you all on are the OSHA's heat injury and illness prevention in indoor and outdoor work setting rulemaking. It's a mouthful. As you know, we've been working pretty closely on this ruling for the past few months. For those who are not familiar, extreme heat is a leading weather-related death maker in the US and disproportionately impacts a lot of the Latino community, particularly in agriculture, construction, and warehousing. So last year, OSHA released a proposed rule to create protections for extreme heat exposure in both indoor and outdoor settings. This include employers to implement some plans and conduct worker trainings in workers' primary language and more. At Green Latinos, we strongly supported this rulemaking, but also sent in more recommendations to strengthen it. Specifically, we urged for protections for undocumented workers, for retaliation, and then also expanding from not only language access, but also requiring culturally sensitive training for these plans. Excited to share that 120 of you signed on to our petition, and we want to thank you. The next steps in this is a public hearing that is scheduled for Monday, June 16th, and will take a few weeks. You did have to sign up for something called a notice of intent to appear, which is basically a sign up, and that has closed. So hopefully you guys received that email with the information. But if you didn't sign up to testify, you can still watch these hearings live. They haven't posted this information yet, but once we get information on the live streaming, we will be sending that to all of you so you can watch along some of these testimonies. If you did sign up to testify, I'll be dropping a toolkit that we created that will help you create your testimony. It has key stats for impacts of extreme heat and is available in both English and Spanish with a template. If you guys have any questions regarding this issue or have any items that you would like us to uplift in our testimony, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our Climate Justice and Clean Air program, alongside some of our state programs, will be giving public testimony. So dropping down that link below. Next slide, please. Next program update is about our Save Clean Energy tax incentive campaign. Some background we are collecting right now stories from individuals to help push back against efforts by a lot of lawmakers to roll back key parts of the Inflation Reduction Act, specifically the tax incentives and funding for items like electric vehicle incentives, solar energy, and home efficiency upgrades. We're going to continue collecting these throughout the next few weeks as we see a lot of is going on with reconciliation and the budget that's been in the news. And so far we've collected 40 stories, so we thank you guys so much for sharing those. Next slide, please. Here's a few kind of examples that you can see of how these stories are being submitted. When you submit your story, we direct them to your member of Congress, both House and Senate, just to highlight these issues with some key stats as well. So a shorter one that we have here is these tax incentives helped me purchase a heat pump for my home, which has helped me lower my light bill and provide reliable heat and AC to my house, which is older. Another short one is clean energy is very important. I haven't personally benefited from solar or electric vehicle, but I view them as important for keeping the planet healthy and going on to the future. And then a longer example we have over here goes over how since graduating in 2017, they've been able to take advantage of some of these programs for their current job and making it so that later on they can look into affording electric vehicle credits and solar as well. So just wanted to highlight the different types of stories you can submit. They don't have to be long. They don't have to be very detailed, just statements on how these energy incentives are helping you or how they could help you in the future. Next slide, please. So again, if you have the capacity, share your story. And I do want to also flag that when you submit to our Clean Air Story Banking, you'll also be submitted for a chance to win some Patagonia gear. So Patagonia in Salt Lake donated a cool backpack, fanny pack, and hat, and we'll be giving these out. We'll be raffling this out to lucky winners after all those stories are collected. If you do need more information on this issue, we do have a blog post that goes more in depth in both English and Spanish. And I'll go ahead and drop those links in the chat. Right, next slide, please. Lastly, I want to highlight that we are working with the Climate Action Campaign for some upcoming field hearings in Los Angeles and Phoenix. You've probably heard a lot of talk about Trump and Zeldin's efforts to roll back a lot of clean air protections, which will only worsen the climate crisis, hurt a lot of public health and raise costs. So in cities like LA and Phoenix, we're seeing these impacts through extreme heat, wildfires, and dangerous air quality. So in response, we're going to be helping Climate Action Campaign with these community field hearings. There'll be listening sessions and empty chair hearings to highlight the administration's failure to listen to the public on these issues. Our goal is to have 30 to 40 testifiers there, and we invite as many people to come as for the audience. We're still finalizing information on both of these events, like location and time, but please mark your calendars if you live in the Los Angeles area or Phoenix for June 21st for LA and June 26th for Phoenix. Next slide, please. Looks like we have a few moments here for questions. So if anyone has any major questions regarding any of those campaigns. And I do see, I will connect with you, Thomas, afterwards on the story pieces. Okay, if there are no questions, and again, feel free to drop us. We'll put our contact information at the end. If you have any questions regarding these campaigns, we can send a follow-up there. Next slide, please. Real quick before I hand it over to all of you, want to highlight our membership program with Green Latinos. Many of you might be a Climate Justice and Clean Air Colectivo member, but we're encouraging you to become a Green Latinos member. So there's lots of different program colectivos that you can sign up for, where you get updates on campaign specifics, but becoming a Green Latinos member kind of gets you into the bigger ecosystem with different updates and our membership hub that helps you direct to different action alerts from all of our programs to upcoming job opportunities and internships and things like that. So would encourage you all to sign up as a member. We have the QR code that takes you to that sign up, and there is different tiers. There's a free version of this, but we also really encourage you to consider making a contribution to our organization to help us continue this work. You've probably heard there's lots of attacks going on to the environmental protections, and we can really, really would support your guys' work. All right, next slide, please. All right, so lastly, we have about a few minutes left where I would like to hand it over to all of you to do any updates, to share any updates from your organizations or just personal of what things you've been working on and or questions in general. Oh, and I do see, what is the link to share your story? I will send that over to you, Hugo. And Hugo, not to put you on the spot, but I did see you share some really cool work that you've been doing with tree planting. Would that be something you'd like to share if you'd like to come off mute to share with that?
Oh, like share that story right now?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Hugo Trevino, and so the story that I put in the chat is that I live in the town of Cicero, which is a suburb of Chicago. And my town, I feel like they do a lot of talking, but I don't see them like really putting things into action. So they said that they got a grant to plant trees, and I'm always like, where are these trees being planted? Because I don't see them. There's also a local newspaper called Cicero Independiente, and they published a story about how the town of Cicero cut down a lot of trees that it was needed because a lot of them were dead, but they weren't replanting them. So I thought maybe as part of this grant, they were going to be replanting them. And my house, we had a tree that was very old. When it got cut down, like my whole family got together. We were emotional. We were crying when the tree got cut down. We had it in our house our entire lives. So when I heard about this grant, I was like, oh my God, why don't I just walk around? I don't even know if it's going to work, but let me get my neighbors to request a tree because technically it's supposed to be a free program. So I did go around, and to my surprise, like people weren't really open to the idea. Some people were complaining that they didn't want to be raking leaves in the fall. Some people didn't like really know what the big incentive of having a tree planted. And so I was like in shock. I thought that it was going to be so easy for me to go around and just get my neighbors to like request a tree. So I really had to go back to the drawing board. I wrote up like a little letter. I basically Googled like what are the benefits of having a tree planted in front of your house. And there are obviously a lot of benefits of like, it stops wind, it reduces the heating and cooling costs. So I also wanted to look at this as like a cost way because I know unfortunately we live in a capitalistic environment. And so one of the ways that I thought about maybe getting my neighbors to buy into this was how can I benefit their pocket. So I looked at that at like, it slows down the air. So your house doesn't get hit with as much cold air in the winter. Once a tree, right, grows to like a full height, it'll also shade your house in the summer. So your house won't get as hot. I also did not know that once a tree is planted in your house, it can add a value to your house of anywhere from $2,500 to once it's fully grown, it can add an additional $10,000 value to your house once you're ready to sell it. And so these were all little things that I put. I put like the top 10 facts and then I put like the resource, like, one was coming like, I don't know, from like Greenpeace, or I don't remember if I also quoted Green Latinos. I might have found like an article or something, but also like the Arbor Day Foundation. Like I just found a bunch of facts because I also didn't want people to thinking like, where's this guy coming from with all these random statistics about how like trees help. And once people started seeing these about how like their house is going to go up in value, how their heating and cooling costs are also going to go, it's going to go, or it's going to help them go down. People were more invested in like getting a tree requested for their house. In Cicero, it's also a predominantly Latino neighborhood. So a lot of my neighbors don't speak English. And so as I was going around, I had like a little clipboard and it was really just like a sheet just to show them, like also make me look more official and not make me look so sketchy that I'm like going around knocking on people's houses trying to get them to do a tree. And so I tried making my form look a little bit more like legit, but I also welcome that I would call on their behalf if they were okay with it. And I just needed to know the name of the owner who owned the house. And that was pretty much it. I already had the address because I was walking around my neighborhood. I requested a total of 18 trees. And I felt pretty proud of myself. And then I just kind of waited. This is the third year now, but this was so 3 years ago I requested it. Trees were planted in September, and then to my surprise, the couple neighborhoods that I was able to get, even though I only requested 18 trees for a lot of the houses, the town, I don't know if they also just had like a surplus of trees and other people hadn't requested trees, but some houses got 2 trees, so more than one tree. My house also got 2 trees. And so in total, once I did the final walk down of the neighborhoods and I was like checking off to make sure that the trees were planted on like the little sheet that I had on my phone, from the 18 trees that I requested, 34 trees were planted. This is the third or the second year now that the trees have been planted. Some of them died. And then, to my surprise, the town also did like their own inventory because I've also been pressuring them. I've been going to town hall meetings and I talked about how it wasn't enough because I also noticed that some trees were kind of dying from like lack of water, things like that. And so some of them were replanted again this year for the ones that died, but that number was smaller. And so it just goes to show, I don't know, it did take a lot. Like it legit was like an entire summer. I have a dog too. So I just love walking him. And it was part of my walk that like if I couldn't get someone to open the door during if they when they would ring a doorbell If I was walking my dog and I would see someone entering their house, I would kind of just have my clipboard on me at all times. And as I would see a neighbor, I'd be like, hey, do you live here? Like, I'm just trying to get trees planted. Like, I'm not asking for any money. I'm not even asking for information besides maybe the name of the owner. I had a copy of the trees who they had gotten it. Like the grant said that they were getting oak trees. I think it was like red oak trees or whatever it was called so that they can see the leaves. But anyways, long story, I could talk forever about this. It took a while, but yeah, this just a little bit about how I got it going and I want to do it again this year. So hopefully now I can actually show people the result too.
Congrats on all of your work. That's really exciting, and that's just shows like how much information really does a lot of work in getting people to sign up. Because I think there's a lot of cool programs out there that just people aren't aware of. So congrats again on all of your work. And
Yeah, thank you.
looks
And
like
yeah, and it was kind of like, I don't want to say people are lazy, but I know people are scared, people don't have time. And so a lot of it, I was just like, please, like, just say yes, I will call on your behalf. Just, let's get this tree planted. And so, yeah, so it's been exciting to see the trees are getting bigger now too. So, but yeah.
yeah, that must be really exciting. And looks like we are a little over on time. So I just want to make sure we get to our final slide with our contact information. But if you have any other membership updates, feel free to drop them down in the chat. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for our Colectivos Encuentro. And again, we'll be sharing all of these slides, all of the information in a follow-up email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we'll get those answered for you. Thank you again, everyone.
Bye, everyone.